Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. We discuss 6 questions in 9 minutes because leaders know how to be concise. Let's get started with today's guest. Our first question, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. My name's Steve Markey. I am the principal at nControl, which is a cyber advisory consulting practice. I'm also an adjunct professor, published author, speaker, and I have my own podcast as well, Buzz and Biz, the Success Podcast. So, jack of a few trades, not all.
You certainly keep busy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, great. Question number 2, what's the best thing about working with a team?
Sure. I've had the privilege, and to me it's a privilege, of mentoring and coaching personnel, usually junior, but sometimes it's folks who are transitioning or pivoting to a different career or specialty, subject matter. And yes, really being able to bring out the best in people and to help them succeed. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's a mark of a leader, right? It's not so much your success, it's really your team's success. And from going back to teaching, I've had several students that I've written recommendation letters, and I would like to think help them to really mark their own path in life, from becoming a doctor to an astronaut with NASA. So I think it's their intestinal fortitude, but I that's how I feel I've left my mark on this rock.
Well, I'm sure you have had a great influence on a number of young people, obviously, if you've been able to encourage them along that career path that they've chosen. So that's fantastic. That's a great response. Well, question number 3, I hear from other leaders of teams that it can be a challenge to get team members engaged. Tell us your thoughts.
Sure. It's all about trust. And sometimes you inherit incumbent personnel on your team that may not have that trust. Speaking for myself, I have spent cycles trying to get that person to trust me. And at the end of the day, it goes back to a book I read from an author named Jim Collins. And I believe it's Good to Great. And he has this analogy or metaphor, maybe, about the school bus. And you got to get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and make sure everyone's on sitting on the right or at the right seat on the bus. And yeah, sometimes there's a personality conflict, and sometimes there's just misunderstandings, and you need to be able to figure that out.
Very much so. Question number 4, what other piece of advice do you have for leaders of teams?
Humility. I'm of the opinion that we all have bills. We all want to succeed. And I've seen a lot of folks that are, especially in the corporate world, okay, where they are focused on managing up and not down. And I'm of the belief, from what I've seen, that any success there is usually temporary to a degree, unless you can really mentor, lead people, your team, manage up, lead down, and foster those relationships. And on top of that, real quick, I've also worked with small businesses and startups and entrepreneur ventures where it's a family business. And I've seen the challenge of the nepotism and folks not being able to have that honest and open communication, right? Where it's a child, an adult child, grown up person that is not holding their own. And of course, I quite certain I was not privy to all the conversations, but just it really affected morale when it seemed that this person was allowed to not line up or meet standards.
Hmm. Yeah, nepotism can be, it's a really dangerous thing when it comes to that psychological safety, that trust that you're talking about. That's a fascinating insight that I don't think I've heard before, is kind of that danger of nepotism. Thank you for sharing that. Question number 5, what other successful leaders of teams, such as yourself, would you like to recognize that have had a positive influence in your life?
Sure. For a little bit of context, I also come from a military background, and I will never forget. I went to military school for college, the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, the Military College of South Carolina. As well as my last 2 years of high school, I went to a military school in Virginia called Fort Union Military Academy. And I was lucky enough to serve under my coach of what was in essence a running team called orienteering. Fred Tucker, a retired colonel, a West Point graduate, and really kind of took me under his wing. I wound up being captain of this team. He was also a math teacher, and I look fondly upon those times. And my dad was around, so it wasn't like I needed a father figure, but he really showed me what leadership was about. And I have a lot of other examples too, but going back to being that teacher at some point too, and you don't make a lot of money even at the college or higher ed level doing that, and so it's usually to pay it forward. So yeah, to Colonel Fred Tucker, if you're out there, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for recognizing him. He's obviously had a great influence in your life, so thank you for recognizing him. 6th and final question, tell us about your first job.
Sure. So I'm going to go to the high school level, right? Versus kind of a post-collegiate, professional, corporate-like job. And I'll never forget, there was this place in the Philly suburbs where I grew up called Bowie 1, and I believe it doesn't exist anymore. I have one older sibling and a brother, and he worked there, and he helped me with the job. And in essence, I was like a runner and dishwasher, etc. And we talked about some of the nepotism with the small business. It was a bunch of brothers and a father, and you start to see some of those challenges. As well as you just speaking for myself, I had to prove myself, and at first I spilt this or did that wrong, but then that quieted down. And I've seen this parallel multiple times in my life where in essence it's the silent respect from afar of he figured it out or she figured it out or they're doing good, right? And I speaking for myself and leadership and leading teams, etc. There's a fine line. Matter of fact, Jocko Willink has a couple leadership books out, and he talks about this, where you don't want to belittle people, and you also don't want to blow up people's egos, right? But at Bowie 1, I realized that just because you feel you're the ghost doesn't mean you're not doing wrong, and you're certainly not perfect. But that helped with understanding kind of the nuances of management, leadership, and again, talking about some of the mentors along the way. It really helped with understanding an old adage I use, that one mess up is worth 1,000 attaboys or attagirls, right? So you got to be very diligent.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And Steve, thank you also for being on the podcast today. How can people find you?
Sure. I have a LinkedIn presence. Again, Steve Markey, Markey, and I just go by Smarkey, right? So if you go to linkedin.com/in /Markey. That will be my LinkedIn profile. I also have a website for my business. It's N as in Nancy, the word control, and then SEC, SEC, Sierra Echo Charlie. So nControlSec.com. And that's it. That's it. I have my podcast, which if you get the LinkedIn, you should be able to get to my podcast. I have a Twitter and blog. Again, if you go to LinkedIn there. And I'm also wrapping up a book on how to secure Oracle's cloud computing. So you may be able to see that as well from my LinkedIn profile.
Well, fantastic. Congratulations on the book. That's a big accomplishment.
Yes, a labor of love, or really just a vanity project. We'll see.
Either way, it's an accomplishment. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
This is Sean Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. For more ideas, you can find us on LinkedIn by searching Blue Sky Business Consulting. Have a great day.